You are listening to the People Centric Podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do.
Hey, people-centric leaders. As people-centric, one of the things that we like to do is we go outside of our own team to get new ideas, to get thoughts, to get things. So we consume leadership books, we consume our other podcasts. We're just always listening to what's the wisdom, not just current wisdom, but sometimes older wisdom that's out there. So today, our team is going to bring you some of that wisdom and something that we say a lot internally. We say it a lot. We don't talk about it as much externally. And we thought today's time to give you one of our secrets, to reveal it. And the secret comes from a very well-known business philosopher that we all follow. And who is the business philosopher, Diana, that we're talking about? You can do the big release, the big
It
reveal.
is Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee. We're talking about Bruce Lee. Now, some of you are going like, is there a different Bruce Lee that I don't know about? Are you talking about like Kato, like the Kung Fu guy? Yeah,
Kung Fu master Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee. Yes, and how he works. Philip, I'm curious. Philip is on with us here now. Philip, you're a little younger than the two of us are. How much exposure have you had in your life to Bruce Lee? Like, are you familiar with him? Like, how connected are you to Bruce Lee?
Oh, I mean, The Karate Kid is just the most epic movie of all time, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah, he wasn't in that at all.
I
Just so
thought
you
he
know.
was. He was clearly not a lot. You know, my Bruce Lee experience is primarily through the team here. So, Don, who is Bruce Lee?
That's that's what I wanted to open up.
That's amazing. You said Karate Kid, and I was like, does he think that Bruce Lee was in?
Isn't he? Is it bad that I think he was
He
Bruce Lee?
was
I've seen
not.
pictures of him,
Yep.
born
Yep.
in Hong Kong, American martial artist and actor. The Bruce Lee. Yeah, we're pretty close.
Yep. That's exactly what his wiki page says.
That's exactly what it says. Born November 27th, 1940. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan.
You're a big fan because he would be, yeah, he died young, unfortunately. Like yeah, it's kind of a sad story and a little bit mystical too. Side note, if you want to go check this out later, like his son Brandon Lee was getting into movies too, and they had like a whole thing about like that their family was cursed. Like there's this whole legend that their family was cursed, and Bruce Lee kind of died under like kind of, I think he had a brain aneurysm or something like that. Like he died kind of like suddenly under mysterious circumstances, like while filming a movie. And then Brandon Lee was getting ready to be really famous and putting out a movie called The Crow, and was killed while making the movie in a weird accident. So it's like the curse kind of did follow through all of that stuff, which also The Crow is an excellent movie, and they did a good job of kind of going back and remaking it with him in it. But yes, Bruce Lee, Kung Fu master, came to the United States, very good karate, very fat and very, very dynamic personality. He was on like the Green Hornet, he played Kato, like he did like lots of different things, but a lot of like if you think about the cheesy 1970s Kung Fu movies, where they're fighting, and he was also the guy that like did the wah, like he was the person that created that. Like that came from him. That he was the one. He would make the noises and stuff, and he was the one that he would put out and like come this way. He would gesture to people like come fight me, and then he was super super fast and all the things. But one of the things that he was famous for saying is a statement that he would say called be water, be like water, was the statement. Be like water. And there's several, you can go on YouTube, you can look this up. There's several things where he says like, be like water, my friend. And he talks about how, water takes the shape of whatever container it's in. Water doesn't fight. It doesn't fight back. So, and when he talks about it in terms of martial arts, this is where we start to use it, is it's the idea is if somebody throws a punch at you, you don't block the punch. You don't stop the punch from happening. Water doesn't try to stop a rock that you throw into it. Water flows around it. And that's the idea. That's his whole idea of his martial arts was he would, if you threw a punch at him, he didn't block it, he would deflect it. He would flow around the punch. So that was that idea. So he says, like, if water is flowing in a brook and it comes upon a rock, the water doesn't try to break the rock. The water just moves around it. The water just flows around it. So we have applied this in a surprising number of places in business, in our own discussions of things, of problems that you encounter in your career. So if you're an employee and you're struggling and you have a problem that you're trying to overcome and you just can't quite break that rock, is there a flow like water strategy around it? If you are an owner of a business and you are struggling to try to get through an industry that is changing around you, or there's things outside of your control and there's problems, are you trying to break the rock, or is there a way for you to flow around it? We often talk about the difference between like executive leadership versus like frontline leadership. Is an executive can't see a problem and just say, I can't get past that. There's nothing we can do. You have to find a way around it. There's no place else to go, right? A supervisor can kind of say, I don't know how to get past that, and then elevate the problem up to somebody. But the executive has no place else to go, so they have to find a solution for that. And so we talk about flowing like water. How do we, if we can't break the rock, how do we flow around it? So that's the concept today. And it's myself, Don Harkey, and Diana Royalty, and Philip Herzog. Philip's going to learn a lot about Bruce Lee today. But I know you've heard us talk about this saying before, Philip, because we talk about it quite a bit internally.
We have. And, I've watched a documentary on the Karate Kid, and I'm now realizing I thought Bruce Lee helped produce and choreograph it. So Mr. Miyagi and Bruce Lee are different people. For anyone who's confused, like I was, flow like water around this, Harky.
Yeah, that's Pat Morita. Just so you know, he was also on Happy Days. So
Was
I
it
did
Pat
not
Morita
confuse.
and Ralph Macchio?
And Ralph Macchio.
Yes, Ralph Macchio.
Ralph Macchio, who had no karate skills, my understanding, going into that movie whatsoever, which was kind of the basis of the movie. So he played it pretty well.
Good acting, you know?
Yeah, and there's not really like a lot of karate in those movies, like the early ones, right? They're not like, it's like the early like Jedi sword fights in Star Wars. It's just,
Isn't there a new Karate Kid now?
I think there is. Didn't Will Smith's son play?
Oh, you might be. Well, I don't know. I don't
think
know
that's
now.
true. I think
You might
that's
be right.
true.
I think Ralph Macchio's back in it, and maybe Jackie.
Oh, they did Cobra Kai. They did the TV show for a while. They did a show Cobra Kai, and it was that Ralph Macchio and like the guy that played whatever the bad guy was on that. Like they're like adults now.
Oh, the Russian guy?
Not the Russian guy. Are you thinking of Rocky now?
Dang it, I'm thinking of Rocky now.
Oh my gosh, you're thinking of Rocky 3.
Never mind.
Okay.
My
Yeah.
old
Okay.
I was thinking the flow around like water. While I don't know who Bruce Lee was, clearly, I do respect his insight. And I think the way we talk about it, to flow like water around a rock, it takes a lot of thought about what's on the other side. Because if you stop right at the rock, maybe you have a couple choices. One, I don't like this rock. This is stupid. I stop. Or two, I'm just going to go a totally different direction. I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. Or three, like, we can still get to the other side, which I think is much of that yes and, right? You're like, okay, yeah, this could be true. Moving forward, moving on, we still have this thing we can do together.
Yeah.
And the first time Dawn told me about this like flow like water thing, I was like, well, I don't like it because I don't like the rock. It's in my way and I need a minute. And so I'm not exactly the best flower, but I eventually get there. The rock stops me, and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go around the rock. But it does stop me in my tracks. So just admitting that sometimes it's easier said than done.
I was going to add, there's maybe a fourth way, which is very much, I imagine, the royalty way. If an angry, toxic royalty is present, is to drill through the rock. Like, I'll show you, rock, get out of my way. But there's often carnage after something like that happens. Hence, flow around the rock.
Bloody. Yeah, it's not good.
People lose limbs.
So let's give some examples of what we're talking about, because we've talked about it like kind of philosophically. So like let's give an example of like flowing around a rock. What's a good example of that?
I had like 4 before we started this podcast, and now I'm like, I don't remember a single one.
It's about preparation, Dana. That's why we did it. So just so that I could ask that question and be really comfortable that somebody was going to have an answer.
I know. I think one that we had talked about was the employee who has the manager that they aren't aligned with, right? Like the manager is doing things they don't agree with. The company is going in a direction they don't agree with, which I think all of us have kind of been in that situation and just been like, what do I do here? And so there's different things you can do in that situation. The problem is that you're not aligned and the rock is there. And so you could do the thing where you punch the rock and you're like, this rock is dumb. This thing is stupid. And I can't believe we're all doing this, right? And you can keep punching that rock. But I think if you have ever punched a rock, You know, that's only hurting you. The rock doesn't care.
It
That
hurts.
problem's not moving, right?
Yeah, the rock doesn't care. I like that point too. It does not hurt the rock.
The rock does not care that you are punching it. But you will get bloodied and battered and more frustrated that this rock is not moving, even though you are punching it. So, in that situation, you can kind of like keep screaming about the problem, keep punching it in the face, keep being mad about it. Or you can choose one of the other ways around the rock and say, like, okay, I'm going to go this direction, which is I'm going to talk to my boss. I'm going to see if there's some things that I can do to change my role, or I'm going to give some ideas to the suggestion box or whatever. And then you could also go the other direction, just say, like, this is what it is. And instead of fighting it, I'm going to roll with it. And I'm just going to continue down the river and do my job.
Yeah. So rock and roll is what you're saying.
Rock and
Rock
roll.
and then roll. Sorry, I couldn't resist that. Yeah. So like punching the rock. So like if you're the employee and you're thinking, I'm okay, my manager is bad. So like I think of like, and I've had bad managers before, and I can think of one job where I had a particularly bad manager, and I thought, well, he's doing all of these different things wrong. Punching the rock, like what does it look like? It looked like for me, like there were times where I told him, like, you're a terrible manager, like you suck. Like there were times where I went to him and said, like, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. And it was punching the rock. The reason it was punching the rock is we know from all of the other podcasts that we've done is if you go to somebody with no relationship, or a bad relationship, and you tell them, hey, you suck, you should change this, that is exactly the way for them to take a rock stance against you. They're gonna sit there and they're gonna be really hard to motivate, hard to push. They're gonna push back. And I can remember one call. I was in another control room. It was back when I was in manufacturing, and my supervisor, who I did not get along with, called the operator in that control room and was complaining about me to the operator. And I was sitting there, and in the control room, the phones were turned up really high. So I could hear both sides of the phone call. And the poor operator was sitting there like on the phone, just like looking at me with his eyes wide open and like just listening to him just rant about how awful I am and all these other things, like just listening to it. And
I love this so much. Like I love that this I'm trying to it's like the modern day I accidentally texted the person I'm mad at. It's that situation.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So I chose to punch the rock. I didn't think in my head like I'm gonna punch the rock. So like if you think this is a flow like water movement, no, this is Don in his early 20s putting a Don-sized hole in the wall. I'm gonna put a Don-sized hole in the rock, or I'm gonna be bloodied and bruised at the end of it. And it turned out to be the latter. He was talking to him from the main control room where several of the operators were. And I went straight to that control room and I walked in and started yelling at him. I just yelled, I'm like, you asshole, what are you doing calling people? And if you have something you want to say to me and if you're going to say it in front of everybody, let's do it right now. Let's work it out right now. You say you can't call my people and tell them what you think of me. That's the people that work for me. You should talk to me about that directly. And let's do this right in front of everybody else. Let's talk about all the problems that you have as a manager and how you're crappy. I mean, that's what I did. That is what I did.
The level of hubris is astounding. But okay.
I don't know what that word means, but thank you.
No.
Is that good? Was that a compliment?
It was not.
Okay. I do know what that word means. Yes, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Now, in the moment, you can imagine, like, I forgive 20-something-year-old Don for doing that because it was my manager doing the wrong thing, calling the person that worked for me to complain about me. Like, think about it, it's like 3 levels, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
The wrong thing to do.
The wrong thing. And I love to your point of the levels of it though, because if you really want to fight a rock, that's fine, but then you really lose the bigger point. Like, where's the river going anyway? Like maybe I'll crush a couple rocks, but then by the time I do that, is there enough left of me, whether it's energy, engagement, motivation, to keep going? Because if every rock you see on the river is a battle, you're never making it far.
And what you did by going and like punching that rock, you actually made more rocks. You didn't know that's what you were doing, but you created more rocks in the river instead of like, now you can easily flow and navigate. No. You messed up more. You have to navigate more rocks now.
Yeah, because I got up to his boss, and taking a step back from the situation, I had a great chance of probably replacing that manager at some point. Like they brought me in to promote me at some point. But then that manager went and told his boss, right? So now suddenly, like now, they're like, oh my gosh, that guy's a hothead. What is going on? So what could I have done differently in that situation? Like, what would be the flow like water approach around it?
I would say it could have been so similar, right? So really similar ingredients, less of a simmer. So give it time to cool. I think one of the things we always say, don't fight angry. So if you're angry, don't hit that rock, right? We all have done that before. So don't intentionally stub your toe. Give it a minute, have a snack break, whatever you need, and then come back and have like the same conversation. Hey, I really would like that feedback from you. Can we talk about this more? You are raising some questions with my team that are significant. And then at the end, you can say, in the future, I would love it if you came to me directly. Like, I want a healthy relationship with you. I appreciate this, that, whatever. Please don't go directly to my team if we haven't talked about this first, right? And if you can say that with the level head, ask some questions, get some buy-in, lean into what their frustration is, because it could have been that manager was upset too. You might not really have been the biggest frustration in their life, though there probably is tension if they know you're going to have my job someday and I don't like you already. So that's a very real thing. But even by example, even if after they left, if you fought all those rocks and were still there, not only was he bigger as a rock while you worked with him, everyone around you will know Don's the kind of person that's going to fight you hard and kick and scream, even when there's bigger context that matters more.
Yeah, that's
think,
very wise.
yeah. I think another thing you could have done is let that opinion of you be out there, right? Like one of my mentors told me one time, like, other people's opinions of you is none of your business. Like, that's their opinion of you. And if you want to change it, you have to change how you interact and react. So I think you solidified the opinion of you by reacting the way that you did. And so instead of just saying like, oh, I'm tracking that, I see that, I'm going to ignore it and I'm going to show him that I am not that person. I'm going to do it differently, right? And flow around the rock instead of creating more rocks.
Yeah, and I think the nuance between those two different selections depends on the nuances of the situation, right? Like I think about Diana, like your solution that a common problem that people have is road rage, right? You get really mad. Somebody cuts you off in traffic. Like really the best thing you can do, you're not going to change that other driver. You're never going to you've cut people off. Like you just have to think about it. Yes, were they wrong and you were right? Yes. Just flow around it. Like, just let it go. Like, whatever. Don't even honk the horn at them. Like, well, I got to let them know. You don't actually have to let them know. You're not letting them know doesn't let them know they made a mistake. Like, it's not like they're thinking, thank you for the driving tip that you just gave me. I will think about this in the future. Like, just let it flow around. And I've talked to people who's like, I absolutely can't. I can't do that. And it's like, well, then you can. You're choosing not to. You're choosing not to. You're choosing to punch rocks, and you're going to end up having other problems with that, right? So what are some problems like executives run into that are like punching rocks? Like what does that look like?
There's an executive team we work with in healthcare, and they had a training program to build talent, to build skillful people in some clinics and teams they needed. And their CEO, in a conversation I had with them, she basically said, this program is failing. It's terrible. We have grant funding for it, but nothing's working. No one's staying through the program. It's all over the place. Please help us figure it out. So we asked, okay, who's involved? We got those people together, almost all of them executives. And at our very first meeting, we just laid out what are the problems, listened to some frustrations. And then I just asked, what are the thou shouts of this program? And initially, they had designed it all themselves. They created like a college course setting. And the person who wrote the grant said, oh, we only need to do this 4 weeks. Like that's the minimum. That's our thou shalt. I said, great. What are our other thou shalts? And it turns out they never talked together. That was the first time they'd all been in the room to make this thing happen. And so really they all were dealing with rocks that actually weren't there. And there was the midway in the conversation, everyone just sat back and said, oh, we can do this in less time and with less resources. And that'll probably help our participants enjoy it more, learn faster, and start earning dollars for themselves and supporting our patients sooner. All of this is easy. And so sometimes I think that's it too. Like it was really foggy because no one really had the same lay of the land, but we got together and we're like, this rock is really small, but they never got together and talked about it and then planned it. So maybe the rocks are real and big sometimes, but getting that wider perspective, it is easier to move a rock that way.
I love that story. I think of that like in Leadership Springfield when I was on the board and we talked about like how can we increase revenue because we wanted to add staff members and we had 32 people in the class and it had always been 32 people in every class and it was like finally the question came up of like could we add more people to the class? We get 100 applicants every year, we only take 32 and we were rejecting some really really good people like the some of the rejected applicants are like definitely movers and shakers in the community and it's like it's kind of weird to think I would like to spend some extra time learning about the community and I'd like to pay you a lot of money to do that and we were going like nope, nope, not you, not going to let you do that. Like it's kind of weird, right?
I
Thinking
was
about
rejected one time. Just putting that out there.
you were rejected by Leadership Springfield.
Yeah, once. I mean, not both times. I applied twice. I was rejected once. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't remember you getting rejected the first time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Did I know
Yeah.
that before we hired you, before you
Yeah.
came on?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll have to flow around that rock now. That changed my opinion.
Movers and shakers being
Movers
rejected.
and
But I think it really was like they had a great class that year.
well, and
So
they did, and what the reason people would get rejected was a lot. Most of the time, it wasn't because of their application; it's because they were trying to get certain number of people in each category. So if they had different categories, if 3 people from the local hospital all applied, they were going to take one. If 3 people from the university applied, they were going to take one. If 3 small business people applied, they were going to take one. So I mean, that's kind of how they would make those decisions. And it was a rock in the organization for a long time because it's like we can't make more money because it's 32 people, and it's to show how powerful like those mental rocks are. The first time it was suggested that maybe we expand the class, there were people who were like, we cannot do that. We absolutely can't do that. And I remember the discussion, I've used it, and I know I've used this example in the podcast before, but like the discussion was like, we can't because the bus can't fit more people. Like the bus only has 34 seats. And I remember in the discussion, I said, well, then we can go to 34. And they're like, no, 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 Don, there's a cooler. Like the cooler has to sit in the front 2 seats, and then we can do the other things. I mean, long story short, now they accept more people in the class. They actually do 2 classes a year. So now like 80 something people get into that class instead of 30 something people. They get a lot more revenue on it. And guess what? In Springfield, Missouri, our busing metropolis, turns out we had more than one bus. So
And
we found
they
second buses or bigger buses.
upgraded their cooler. The cooler is the size of a bus. So that was figured out pretty well too.
Yeah, you solve those problems. So Philip, I like your example of that because it's like sometimes those rocks are real and sometimes they're not real. Sometimes it's just a mental like we're stuck on something that we shouldn't be stuck on. And that's because maybe we've always done it that way. There's that statement. Maybe it's because it's a little bit scary to change it. That happens a lot. We see that on teams, especially with conversations. I see that a lot. Like, well, I can't obviously, I've got a salesperson who is our top salesperson, but they have 30% of our revenue. And so when somebody new starts, that salesperson goes and meets with the new person and tells them how they'll never survive here. And they're super toxic. And I can't go have a conversation with that person because then I risk 30% of my revenue. And that was a huge risk for a company. So therefore, there's nothing I can do. And it's like, no, 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 there's lots of ways to flow around that. Like what is the rock? First of all, is it really a rock that you can't go talk to that person? Maybe it's how you go talk to that person is the thing that you should think about, right? So maybe think about those rocks. It's not maybe even flowing around the rock. Maybe there's no rock in the first place. Maybe you just anticipate there's a rock. So you kind of have to know where you're trying to get around that rock. I like that
rock
point, Philip.
mirage.
It's a mirage.
Rock rock.
I was thinking that's a big raucous. A big raucous going over. A lot of noise.
Oh man.
I love that you tried it, Diana. I just love that you
I
threw it out there.
couldn't get there. It's close. It's not working, you know?
A Marrakesh. Yeah, it's when there's a rock that's not really there that you don't realize that you think you have to flow around, but you could just really do go through it. You can go through that spot, right? So, what are some other examples? I mean, I think what about like peers in your coworker? Like you might work with whatever level you're in. What if you have a peer that you're struggling with? What are some rocks that we see that are common there?
I think it does with peers specifically. I think a lot of the rocks are the conversations. It's the, hey man, I asked you to do this thing for me and you did it, but it's not as good as when you do it for yourself. Like I can see that. Or I don't know. I feel like I'm doing all of this project and you said you were going to help me and I need more help or what, you know, I think it's the like, how do we have the conversation in a healthy way? And I think the rocks are really the conversation. The rock isn't that the person's not helping you. The rock is that you don't want to have the conversation about the person helping you.
That's good. Yeah, there's a concept in crucial conversations called the sucker's choice. And it's funny. Another way of saying it, it's you're between a rock and a hard place is the way that it can be described, which fits really well with our analogy here. It's the idea that psychologically we think, okay, if I have that coworker that I'm struggling with, if I have a difficult conversation with them, one of two things is going to happen. Either I'm going to go talk to them and then they're going to hate me for the rest of our life. My work's going to be miserable, or I'm never going to talk to them and then I'm going to be miserable because I have to lead with you. Like psychologically, it's natural for us to think about those things and get lost in that. Like that just happens as humans. When the truth is probably in between that somewhere. Like it's probably not going to be the best thing you've ever done or the worst thing you've ever done. It's probably going to be something in between all of that stuff. So don't get stuck in the sucker's choice, right? So I love this topic. We have used that analogy a lot on our team. That's why we try to bring it to you is like, is there really a rock? What's on the other side of the rock? How do we flow just around the rock? And there's examples sometimes where I like Diana, what you said, just sometimes just get over it. Sometimes the rock's in your head. Like if your manager is not doing the right things and you can't control that and there's no chance of you thinking about changing it, then sometimes the best thing you can do is just say, okay, I've got a manager who's not doing the right things. Can I live with it? Can I just move on from it? We've talked about like even in a job, maybe your employers aren't doing the right things. And you're like, I want to change my employer because I love this team and I got to do this. And it's like, yeah, but you don't. You can't. It's a rock. You can't change that. Like maybe you can't change that thing. So then you have to decide, do you stay or do you go? And how do you flow around the rock? If you can't change it, you could leave. That's flowing around the rock. Some of you are saying, yeah, but that's not fair. Yeah, the rock is not fair. The rock is there. You didn't want the rock to be there, but it's not fair. So it's there. Or the other alternative, and like I've got a good friend who's doing this and who said, like, yeah, I don't love my employer right now, but I'm going to be okay with that. I'm going to lead my team well around me, and I'm going to say the employer's not making good decisions, and I'm just going to check my attitude and watch for it, and I'm going to lower my expectations for my job for a little while, which hurts my heart, honestly, as a people-centric person to say, hear somebody say like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go into disengaged mode deliberately, essentially. But like if that's how you have to flow around that rock and that's your choice, that's a fine choice. And then he's focusing on other areas of his life, right? That's which is another opportunity there. So last thoughts for everybody on flowing around the rock and Bruce Lee, which is not related in any way to Karate Kid. Go ahead.
As I think about The Rock, I also reflect on a quote from Star Trek that is sometimes you can do everything right and still fail. So like remember, sometimes the rock's just not gonna move. And you can you can flow around it and you can move around and like you can do everything right and the rock will still exist. So if that's the case, just know sometimes the rock is immovable.
I believe that's called the Kobayashi Maru.
It is the Kobayashi Maru.
Yes.
Yeah. We're nerds here.
Look at Philip. He's shaking his head still. You
Right.
got some assignments to do to go catch up on some old movies there, Philip, so that you can catch up.
Yeah, that is my rock, and I may not yes and that rock. I have got a busy life, but I do want to know how to spell that whatever you just said. That sounds very interesting. I could really use that for Scrabble points with Claire.
Kobayashi Maru. That's it.
That is quite
Okay.
What is that? French? No.
The Kobayashi Maru, I should explain it so if anybody else is listening who's a Philip is like, what does that mean? It's basically a thing that they make all starship captains go through, and it's an exercise where it's the unwinnable scenario. So they put you in a simulator and they make you go through the scenario where you can make all the decisions and you can do all the things right, and at the end you still die, and they want to watch and see how you handle it. So that's the idea of the Kobayashi Maru. But the flip side of that, not to ruin it, but there's only one Starfleet captain that actually beat the Kobayashi Maru, and it was Captain James T. Kirk. So he won the unwinnable scenario. And you'll have to watch the movie if you want to see how he did it.
I will look into that.
But as Philip said earlier, I have a life, so I'm going to go do that. So Philip just flowed like water right around that suggestion, as you saw. So he did it in action just now. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to go watch all the Star Trek movies.
I love Star Trek, but there's a lot of them. It's a whole universe. This whole time we were talking, I was thinking of a famous figure that I know a little bit better, not personally, but is The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. And there are no amazing quotes that he has for this, but I do think this is a little cheesy and a little helpful. The Rock, One of his famous quotes. Being kind is the easiest thing you can do. And I don't know if it's the easiest thing you can do, but I think that's an element of when you meet the rock. Like to Don, your story, like if you meet rocks with kindness, I think kindness for yourself, kindness for the people around you, that's a good thing to think about. Because if you're going to fight it, just flowing like water is really a kind thing to do for yourself and for others, thinking of what's on the other side. So a lot of rock figures we talk about, but that is my closing thought.
I could not end it any better. So we're going to end right there. Thanks everyone for joining us. You heard from Bruce Lee. You heard from The Rock. You heard from James T. Kirk today. You're welcome. That's all I have to say. Just send your fan mail in and we will try to get to it in the order in which it is received and work through it. Thanks a lot for joining us on the People Centric Podcast. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and